You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and today is 4/22/21. Well, you know, one of the hardest things in life, especially if you're a politician or public official, is to admit that you were wrong about something. You don't believe me? Well, look at the whole COVID mess. Look at that one certain doctor. I don't want to mention his name. He's been wrong about everything, and yet hasn't admitted it once that he was wrong. And now he's going on to the next pronouncement. What is with people? Why is it so difficult to admit it when you're wrong, whether it's with your kid, your spouse, or yourself? It's the hardest thing in the world to admit that you're wrong. Well, we're going to find out more about that. I'd like to know some instances where you were wrong and you finally caught on. Send me an email to my personal email address, kl@kerrylutz.com. Right now, our good friend, Dr. John Huber, is with us. You know him well, clinical psychologist and all-around great guy. Hey, Dr. Huber, so I hope I wasn't wrong to invite you on today, but it's great to have you back.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to take the time and spend it with you.
Hey, so admitting one's errors, the errors of one's way, admitting you were wrong about something, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's a business decision you made, whether it was a decision with your child, why do you find it so difficult to come to terms with it and admit it? Why is that so difficult to do for so many of you out there, and how can we do it better?
Well, I'm glad you brought it back to us mere civilians instead of sticking with politicians, because, you know, there's some differences with politicians. One of them is they have cameras and spotlight on them all the time, and everybody's looking to knock off the lowest hanging fruit there. But with us humans who are out in the real world, you know, trying to just make it through each day, it's really hard for a lot of reasons. And maybe if we kind of look at what makes it easier for us to admit we're wrong, and the simplest thing to do to increase the likelihood you're going to change your ideas about something and admit you're wrong is if you change your behavior first. You know, if you stop doing what you realize is wrong and do the right thing in place of it, and then your mind then can more easily wrap itself around the fact that, oh, it was right now, or I'm right now, but I was wrong before. And a lot of it then goes back to this whole idea of an ego. We have this sense of who we believe we are. And if we even admit that we're wrong to ourselves, we're kind of chipping away at that. And all of a sudden, maybe we have to admit we're not the person we think we are. And that's a hard thing to overcome. You know, that most of us have what we call an ego ideal in psychology. What that means is we have this person that we are constantly every day striving to be, that role model for us, so to speak. And it may not be an actual person. It may be an ideal that you have in your mind, a picture of how you think you are. And our mind and our unconscious wants to believe we're moving in that direction all the time. And we use defense mechanisms. I mean, some things Freud was exactly right on. And one of them is this whole thing where we project. We see what's wrong in other people. We also see what's wrong with us. But when we see it in other people, we call them on it and ignore the fact that we have the same problem. And that one of the biggest ones is admitting we're wrong. And ironically, that one thing gives us more control over our world than anything we can do as an individual. Admitting that, hey, this was a bad decision, this was a bad choice, I need to change that, is so empowering. And it's something that I work with my patients who are struggling with depression and anxiety and things like that. But if we can do this in our everyday life, think of how evolution works. You know, you adapt. Well, by admitting that your choices or your ideals are wrong and adapting, that allows you to grow and become the best possible person. And through that lesson, I don't want to call it a failure, through that lesson, you can actually get closer to that ideal person that you want to be, that role model that you're trying to shoot for. It is such a difficult thing, though, because you want to believe that everything you're doing in your life is actually putting you in that direction to become that perfect, ideal person. Now, in reality, we should never reach that person, and we should understand that it's an ideal. And in other words, you should strive for that, but you shouldn't panic if you don't ever get there. And if you take those two things together, then all of a sudden it's a lot easier for us to start admitting we're wrong. If you're famous or you have media following you because you're a politician, boy, that just gets compounded because you can't even admit you're wrong and kind of walk into your closet and go home and be protected because it's on the radio, it's on the news, it's on the internet, it's everywhere that you made a mistake. So it's even more powerful motivator to not admit you're wrong for those people who are in front of the public eye.
Right. So, one time, it's so funny. I remember some movie where, they're closing a steel mill in Pennsylvania, and this guy goes up there. It's played by Judge Reinhold. He goes to the steel mill, and he's bombarded by reporters, and he says, we're closing the steel mill. They say, why do you want to close the steel mill? This is terrible. You're destroying communities, blah, blah, blah. And he says, we can't make any money here. And all of a sudden, he becomes a hero because he actually told the truth instead of sugarcoating it and coming up with petty rationalizations, coming up with all sorts of reasons and doing anything but admitting the truth. And initially, he's thinking he's going to get fired, but he becomes this celebrity. He's on the cover of Time magazine. I mean, right? It's a case of the truth can set you free, although that's a kind of little absurd application of it. But really, eventually, the truth will set you free.
Absolutely. And it is a little kind of Pollyannish to think that, because you tell the truth, you're going to be on Time magazine. But it is also very refreshing when you have somebody who comes up there and doesn't give you double speak and says, here's the bottom line. We just can't afford to stay in here because of taxes, the cost of employment, the cost of electricity, all the resources, whatever. There may be 1,000 different reasons why they can go it somewhere else cheaper. Maybe the cost of shipping the raw material is much less. And then the labor may even be the same price, but it's probably less because you're starting out people new. They don't have longevity. They haven't been there for 15 or 20 years and got seniority and things like that. So all of a sudden, it is a better economic move for a corporate entity to do that because, believe it or not, we sit back and, we sell things on the marketplace and people get used to them being a certain price. And if all of a sudden you have to raise the price a significant level, people start wondering, oh, yeah, now it's all pure profit. And so it's very difficult, even sometimes when we know that the corporate tax rates have gone up and the cost of doing business goes up. So they raise that cost to sit back and think that they're not just trying to take that all as corporate profits. When the reality of it is, people in the IRS, all these people are watching corporations every day and monitoring what their profit margins are and things like that and keeping an eye on that. I mean, so we don't want price gouging. We don't want people to, hey, there's a hurricane and I'm the only one who's got plywood left, so I'm going to charge you $100 a sheet of plywood instead of the 20 I normally charge. There's some unethical things that people get offended by, even though the rules of supply and demand say, hey, the guy can get $100 a sheet for it and you want it, that he should be able to have that. Then there's a balance. And we try to meet that with some kind of social standards that say, yeah, you can do that, but it's not the morally just thing to do. So you need to take care of business appropriately.
All right. So
yeah, go ahead.
Here's a question for you. You're talking about raising prices. I'm sure it's happened to you. You've had patients for several years, perhaps. They're seeing you and your costs have gone up, the rent in the office, your utilities, cost of gasoline, et cetera, and you raise the price. Did you ever get any blowback about that? Do they think you're price gouging them and, it should just stay the same?
Don't just survive, thrive. the Financial Survival Network.
Fury Gold Mines is a Canada-focused exploration and development company committed to aggressively growing its scalable, high-grade gold assets with major drill campaigns planned across its 3.5 million ounce portfolio. Fury is led by a management team of proven explorers and developers with a track record of success in advancing and financing project development. Fury Gold Mines is well positioned to create value for investors with low-risk development growth and the potential for a new major discovery. Fury Gold Mines trades on the TSX and NYSE American under the ticker FURY. To learn more, go to furygoldmines.com. That's furygoldmines.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
Well, this is a service industry. Whether I went to school to provide a service, and it's a little different than building, a house, for example. Where we know since January the cost of lumber has gone up 30%. It's not that in your face kind of situation, and because of how insurance works, more often thought they're coming back and saying they're lowering my rates instead of raising it. But occasionally we get some small increments. Cash payers, my patients, and that's pretty much all I see at this point, just because of the evolution of my practice. Cash payers, if they've been with me for therapy for 5 years or 3 years or 10 years, it just depends. I typically don't raise their rates unless they quit and then come back after my rates have raised. But the new patients who walk in the door, they get, here's my current rate, and it's $300 an hour. But if you're going to do something that requires litigation, it's $400 an hour. And then, whatever that is. And then on top of that, legally, I'm allowed to do sliding scale, because some people may come to my office and say, I just lost my job and here's my finances. And legally, then I can give them a sliding scale, but I have to be careful because, where do I take that sliding scale? It has to be already set in stone. I have to have it written out somewhere. And my goal then is to give them the best price I can while I can still pay my bills. So it's a little different than manufacturing something where the commodities involved in me producing a house again. Those prices vary, not just with season, but with the building demands and things like that. And there's a lot more fluidity in that price change in that situation. So what I've seen is my patients, I let them know, okay, we're wrapping up and they're going to stop seeing me for a while. And I let them know, okay, my rates have gone up since you've been here. So, when you come back, if you choose to come back, you'll be paying the current rate that's available at that time. It might be the same. It might have gone up, whatever. Here's what my current rate is if you were to start today. And so they have an idea what's going on. And, they come back when they need to come back. And it also kind of makes me be lean as far as, let's do 10 more sessions when 3 is probably going to be enough. And, and that's an ethical responsibility I have too. And then I have some patients who come in, I said, okay, we made all your treatment goals and now we're ready to go. Discharge. Yeah. And a lot of them are like, this is the only place I have where I can speak my mind. If I say something at home, my husband gets mad, my wife gets mad, or my kids get upset. And I think there's a value in me coming here, maybe not every week, maybe once a month. And I'm a cash payer. So you're not going to be violating any insurance laws or rules or anything else like that. And so I comply with them, but I want to tell them up front, I don't want to cause them financial harm. That's an ethical responsibility I have to my patients. So it's kind of an interesting deal when we're talking about, medical and mental health services. I didn't get into this business to become rich. I got into this business to help people. So at the same time, if I can't pay my bills, I can't help anybody. So it's kind of a two-sided coin that I always have to manage versus what I have to do in the businesses that I work at, where we have products and things like that we're selling versus the service.
Sure. Gotcha. Well, that's good that you grandfather in your longer-term patients so they know what to expect. And but like you say, you got insurance companies are always cutting back. Very rarely do they increase. But in any event, getting back to what we were talking about with people often lie to to really conceal the fact that you made a mistake, right? And that really compounds it. That makes it even worse, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And it's a scary thought, because they'd rather save face than back up and say, hey, more information has come to light or whatever. And I realized that we made a wrong choice. I directed that choice. So the power, again, comes in being able to recognize that and make changes to make it a better place. And maybe I'm Pollyannish. I think if we had a politician who had the heart and the motivation to do that, I think it would be refreshing across this country. And I think we'd be surprised how well they did.
I think we had one of those, but we won't talk about it. You know what happened to him.
Yeah, I may agree with that.
But
it scared a lot of people.
but what about the concept of like from that movie, A Few Good Men? You can't handle the truth. The public can't handle the truth about COVID. They can't handle the truth about the economy. They can't handle the truth, the fact that the country is bankrupt. What do you say to that?
Well, on the simplest terms, I call BS. I think the American people are resilient, and they like being told the truth as much as they may hate the truth that's being told to them. They like that because then they can actually see what the real problem is and attack that. I think in some of our situations, not all of them, the people in power who say that you can't handle the truth, they're afraid if they tell you the truth, they're going to lose power and control. And it boils down to that big, that C word, control.
Well,
control.
Yeah, sure. Well, let's give an example, though. So the country, in my opinion, in any event, has been going bankrupt for years, debased the monetary system, and now we're printing up trillions of dollars. And the politicians never wanted to say to the public, if you do this, this is going to happen. There will be consequences to your insatiable desire for government services. They've never been able to stand up to the public and tell them, and really, and admit that the policies, both of their party and the other party and their predecessors going back, 60, 80 years, have all been wrong and led us on the path of ruin, right? They just can't admit
it. Absolutely. It's like, Social Security is going bankrupt, but there's always more money to pay for this foreign country that's struggling over here, but not for us. I think you're exactly right. And it boils back to that whole control and power issue. If they let you know, they lose control, they lose power. If they took us back to a gold-based economy, all these multipliers that our banking system have that allow them to lend, 30, 40 times the amount of cash that they or deposit they actually have, and then charge those people, 27, 28, 29% on credit cards, and just rake in the digital ones and zeros. It gives them this too big to let fail mentality, and then our politicians come in and back that up. It's not a real capitalist society. It's a manipulation propaganda society at this point, I think.
Hey, and people want to be lied to in the final analysis. I mean, right?
I think so. I think that's where they're at. They'd rather be told something to make them feel good in the moment instead of telling something that scares them, but then they can actually do something about it.
Yeah, well, I think we'll leave it at that. But the truth is always the ideal antidote. It might be the most painful option available to you, but like Shakespeare said, to thy own self be true. And if you're not being true to yourself, then you can't possibly be true to anyone else, can you?
Absolutely. I say it in therapy all the time. You can lie to me all you want, but if you're lying to yourself, you've got bigger problems than you imagine.
Exactly. And self-deceit is a natural human tendency. Mainly, I think you're right, due to the ego and due to the superego too. Your parents, you lie so you don't let your parents down, even though the lie is a bigger letdown than whenever you did wrong in the first place, right?
Absolutely. You hit it right on the head. Thank you so much, Kerry.
Hey, well, thank you, Dr. Huber. Where do we find you? How do we connect with you? on the web?
Right now, at this point, it's tripsitter.clinic, tripsitter.clinic.
All right. And take a look at that site. There's a lot of interesting information about using psychedelics to end depression and other emotional problems and disorders, I guess. And there's more information coming down the road there. So make sure you sign up for notifications. And that's a must. I'm on the list too. Dr. Huber, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on again.
Thank you so much, Kerry, and have an amazing day.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.